All right, I'm going to close out the poll and I'm going to share our results. All right, Mary, are you seeing the results? Is everybody seeing these results? Okay, so we're at 46% that have never created a lesson within a digital portfolio before. Welcome. You're not alone, as you can see. So that's really good news. And I think what you're going to get from today's webinar is really going to help you get started, and not just get you started, but help you to feel comfortable in the space, knowing that it is easy. Mary's going to show you just how easy that is. We've got about 21% of you, it sounds like, that have used some form of a DP. So like that Google site, I know within my own children's experience, oftentimes they'll come to me and say, I have to do a digital portfolio in a slide from Google. And of course I have to argue with them. but then there's lots of different options out there we know that you can be using. The focus here will be using Bulb in this experience. It looks like we've got 21% that have created a few in Bulb, so that's good to know, but you're definitely going to benefit from some of the tips that Mary's going to show you today. And and then of course we've got no response from that last one. And that's okay. I think if Mary had responded, we would have seen a different ending to this poll. So I'm going to go ahead and close out our results, and I'm going to share my screen just so that we can get started and do a proper intro with Mary. So everyone, welcome. Welcome to Lesson Planning with Bulb, from Design to Evaluation with Mary Kemper. If you attended our last webinar, you would have seen her along with our other panelists. We were so excited to invite her back for this particular webinar because we knew from her day in, day out experience that she was the right person to do this. So without any further interruption, I would love, Mary, for you to just give a nice little introduction into who you are and what you do at Coppell.
Sure thing. I'm Mary Kemper. I'm the math director in Coppell, so I support all of our campuses from pre-K through 12th grade in curriculum and instruction, professional learning, program design, supporting all educators and all learners with the range of academic and social emotional support and other duties as assigned. I really love what I do because I feel like it's a great opportunity to help change the mindset about teaching math and help people feel successful teaching math and learning math. And so I'm really excited to share a few resources with you today explicitly, and then give you access to a whole lot more.
Awesome. So just a quick reminder, you guys, of our learning objectives for today. What we're going to, or I should say what Mary's going to be covering. She's going to show her process for creating lessons within Bulb. Expert tips and tricks are definitely coming your way in this hour. We're going to discuss how Mary approaches learning outcomes and measures student success, because ultimately, if you can't do the measuring on the end of it, what is the purpose of doing the lesson to start, right? We want to be able to see how that student has progressed and grown. Provide educator lessons and student assignment examples within Bulb. As a matter of fact, just before I opened it, she actually showed me she's got students and educators in there right now pulling down her lessons as we speak. So we're going to see that number continue to grow, and we'll definitely make time to do some Q&A. So don't hesitate to use the questions or put something in the chat, because we are monitoring that during this time. All right, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. And Mary, I'm going to go on mute, and I'm even going to go off video. I'm still here, and at some point, if I see something that I want to stop and question, I will go ahead and pop back in. But I want to be able to give you the full screen and have at it.
Okay. I am sharing some slides first, and I'm going to walk through the process I use, kind of opening my brain and sharing what I think about when I'm designing a learning experience, especially in light of the situation we're in now, but how it can apply beyond this. know that when I design learning experiences, I'm thinking about all students. We know from Todd Rose that we cannot design for the average because the average student doesn't exist. And I also know that since I don't have any students of my own, I'm creating content for my educators. So they need to be able to interpret what I'm thinking and apply it in their classroom should they choose to use it exactly as is or edit it to make it appropriate for their kids. So I'm going to start with this quote from one of my new favorite books, Mathematics for Human Flourishing by Francis Su, that every being cries out silently to be read differently. I'll talk a lot about personalization of digital portfolios and math experiences and how we don't want a cookie cutter approach to artifacts of learning. So when I design learning experiences, I want to start with talking about what I don't do. I don't open a blank document like I used to. When I first started 18 years ago, that's what I did when I wrote lessons. And I would start with a blank document and I would just type out example 1, example 2, example 3. This is what I'm going to tell the kids. And then I would make a worksheet of practice problems. I don't do that anymore. I don't search the internet or any sites for lessons. I don't look for videos to teach my kids the content. I don't look for an app that would replace the educator. What I really want to do is create the conditions for learning to occur. I want inquiry and discovery. I want hands-on learning, which is really challenging right now because I don't know what's in the kids' homes. But I want them to see and do math. And I want them to have a pleasant experience with it. And I want them to understand it to a deeper level. So this is just a picture from my office the other day at home where I was working on a fractions lesson, and I just got out a bunch of toys and tools and math pattern materials that I happen to have at home because I'm a math teacher, and just started building and photographing what I had. So the best way for me to explain my process is to go through an example. So a recent lesson or learning experience I put together was about measurement. And I want my kids to be able to estimate length, build benchmarks for reference, like this is about a foot, and use measuring tools precisely. It's really important to begin to build that precision in mathematics and be able to measure to the nearest whole unit at this level. Now, in their words, I want them to say, I can find the length of objects using concrete models for standard units of length. So at this age, this is when the kiddos are moving from non-standard measure to standard measure. So they're going from putting paper clips end to end to measure the length of their desk to using unit cubes or 1-inch squares to using a ruler. So it's that bridge. So I want them to be able to do that. Ultimately, I want the kids and need the kids to collect artifacts of learning. And artifacts being photographs, their thinking laid out in writing or in spoken language. I want them to capture and collect the learning process, not only the final product. Very often we just look to the final product as adult learners and as children. So I want to capture the process along the way. We really need to capture the growth for lots of reasons, for that growth mindset, for the reflection on their social emotional well-being, that they can be a math person and they are mathematicians, but also for accountability purposes at the local, state, and federal level. We need to be able to show that our kids are growing. So the activity started with reading the book Actual Size by Steve Jenkins. We have, and I hope many of you do too, a very, very large collection of digital texts in our digital libraries that are accessible now that the kiddos are at home.
I'm sorry.
And because of that, I tagged into the book actual size. So I knew that every kid had access to this. The teachers could read it, like through Zoom or another virtual meeting platform, or the kids could follow along as their device, their tablet would read it to them, or their parents could read it to them, or they could read it at their own pace. And then based on the book, which I recommend you check out the book, but based on the book, they create the actual size of me. So they measure themselves. So they add their name, where they go to school, and then they measure their height and the size of their hands and their feet. They measure their long jump. And this is a student work sample. And I'm gonna stop, actually, I want to stop the presentation. And I wanna be able to see the chat, because I want you to tell me what you notice about this student work sample. Let me see if I can open the chat. There you go.
Can you see the chat okay, Mary?
I'm getting there.
Because I can see it too. So I just want to make sure if there's anything.
I got it. Okay, so I'm going to ask the participants to make sure that you send a message in the chat to all panelists and attendees. And when you do that, let me know what you notice about the student work sample. What do you notice about the child's measurements that she added to this activity? Shayla says they're incorrect. Handwritten text, short answers. Tell me more. Shayla, why do you, oh, not reasonable. Jessica, tell me more. Hands are not 2 inches long. Feet in inches are what you're noticing. Do you have, as an educator, do any questions come to mind that you wish you could ask the student if the student was right next to you? Brooke says unrealistic measurements. What did you use to measure? Right, we don't know for sure. I wish she could show me how long an inch is. Maybe she measured the width and not the length. Did she use the correct measuring tool? Show me how you measured, which is something we'd want to ask the kid, right? Like, I wish I could see the child measuring. Like, wait, I'm feeling confident in the height measure. Maybe not, I don't know for sure it's accurate, but I'm feeling confident in the height measurement of being 4'2". But I don't know if that's correct, but I'm really nervous about the hands and the feet. I would ask her to create a video. Kim, okay, hold on to that thought. I'm gonna go back and keep going, but y'all are right on. Okay, so I'm gonna keep going. And the next activity in this learning experience was the kids watched a short video. We happened to have a subscription to Brain Pop. So some of them watched a specific video there. Some of them watched a video created by their educators explaining the details of measurement and measuring with precision and things like that. So an opportunity for them to gain some new knowledge. There is a time in math for that direct instruction, being it very intentional and timely and focused and accessible. So the next things they did after that was they used blocks or tiles or cubes And so remember I mentioned that they're bridging from that non-standard measure to the standard measure. So this is a picture from my house. I intentionally choose materials that might look familiar. I'm telling you, you just go into your closets and you just look for things. It's different when you're at work or at school. But so this is a ukulele, a nice little vocabulary term there. But so I grabbed Lego blocks, and this was actually done in, this is an image, but I did it in a stop motion animation so you could see me putting the Lego blocks one at a time. So my ukulele is 16 Lego blocks long, and since I was instructed to use approximate 1-inch blocks, then I said that my ukulele is 16 inches long. So then the students are given a media placeholder or a space to put a photo. And that's really important. So just like Kim said, asking her to create a video, not exactly as great as a video, but I asked them to take a photo of them measuring and then tell me what they measured. So it will give me a peek into their brain. Now, the other thing, back to that quote at the beginning that I shared, this is their unique photo. This was what makes this artifact of learning their own. It also helps support digital citizenship, where they're taking their own photos. We're not searching the internet. There's a time and place for that, but we're asking them to use their own photos, using their camera to collect artifacts. So this is an example of what one student did. She said her walkie-talkie is 10 blocks long, or 7.5 inches. So that led me to more questions. How did she know it was 7.5 inches? Did she lay a ruler down? I see there are 10 blocks. You can double check the counting. So the blocks are clearly less than 1 inch. If I had the child in front of me, I would ask lots of questions like, why is it only 7.5 inches if it's 10 blocks? How do the blocks compare to 1 inch measure and all that good stuff? I am noticing how the blocks line up end to end of the walkie-talkie. And I'm really proud about that. That's something where I'm looking for precision. So there's a little bit of practice with some non-standard measure. The next thing they need to do is they're going to begin to build that benchmark idea. So I wanted them to estimate. Estimation is the hidden key to numeracy. To estimate doesn't mean to solve the problem and then round, like solve the problem and then make yourself sound almost right. Estimating is actually trying to reason through without computation first. So I wanted them to look around their home. This is again during our time of social distancing, for objects that are about 1 foot long. And we have iPads for our kiddos 1-to-1, and so they use the Measure app. They don't have to. They could have laid a ruler down and you'll see that. But they needed to find 4 objects that were about 1 foot long, measure it to verify their thinking, and then add an image. So this is an example of that. I'm going to pause again, and I want you to take a look at these measurements that this child made with this ruler, which, by the way, I love that the ruler has Sharpie marks all over it. I just love it. So take a look at these and tell me what you notice or wonder in the chat. Yeah, Shayla says are the same type. So there's a lot of rectangular measures, right? Rectangular prisms. And they were all about the same size. Yeah, so she was supposed to find things that are about 1 foot long. So they're pretty close. She wonders how the last photo fits, right? Like you could do a notice and wonder, or which one doesn't belong here. Take a look at the measurement. I'm gonna escape from here and zoom in real close. Right. Barbara says the objects are centered on the ruler. Jennifer says not precise. Look at this, right? I don't know if you can see my mouse, but I'm zooming in and it's blurry, I know. But notice that the ruler is not lined up at the end. The ends are not lined up. Now, it is approximately 1 foot, right? Like it's about the same length as the ruler, but we're not looking at measuring. If I was in class, there would be a teachable moment to help that. For this test, does it really matter? Sabrina says, no, because I'm talking about estimation, right? But when you measure, what practices can we get into with the kids? So if the child was in front of me, I would want them to line that ruler up at 0. Exactly. It doesn't have to start with 0. That's correct. But what it's leading me to is more questions. Does the child know that when she doesn't line it up at 0, that we have a little bit of different thinking that comes into it? I don't know. That's the thing, is I don't know what the child's thinking. The next step is 1 meter long, and take a look at these. Okay, there's a few things I wonder right here. Look at the tool the child is using. Do you know what that is? I am not sure, and maybe I have not found these, but it looks like a tape measure, which usually is measuring in inches. And so I have so many questions, like, does this child know the conversion to figure out about 1 meter? Because the pictures are blurry, I can't tell. But look, it's the same degree of accuracy, I would say. But you can see the measurement happening, and the estimation is pretty spot on. But I'm hoping that you get this conclusion that I don't really know. There's so many questions I have. I really wish I knew more about what the child was thinking, even though I know a little bit more. The next step was after they did some estimation, is to go measure. Go find something and measure it. And so I gave them some ideas about what they could possibly measure. And then, I'm sorry, this is blurry. This child used the Measure app. You can see that's the Measure app image, and a ruler. But this time, I know it's hard, this is 0. So this child did line the 0 up with the dad's cell phone in order to find the accurate measure. And with the Littlest Pet Shop gem, which I thought was absolutely perfect, measuring the height, and that the 0 is at the end of the ruler, measuring the height there. So I'm getting more information, but I still feel like I don't know what the child knows. I feel like I have a lot of questions, but I'm wondering how else the child can capture artifacts beyond photos, even though these were really great. So here's a few reflection prompts from the students. I don't know everything about measuring yet, but I do know you can use a ruler to measure. You can measure in centimeters, kilometers, meters, inches, and feet. I don't know everything about measuring yet, but I do know we can use inches for small objects and use feet for large objects. We can use a ruler, yardstick, and measuring tape to find length. And I don't know everything about measuring yet, but I do know feet is more than inches. You don't have to measure with a ruler. Inches is more than centimeters. So if you notice, I gave the students sentence stem, and I want to show you that here. This is the template for reflection that the students had in their digital portfolio. And it's very consistent to the format of the other reflection templates that I gave throughout this distance learning experience. it follows the order of the lesson. Watch the video about measuring and read actual size. This is where the children would put their actual size of me activity, so the image of the measurements with the book. The learning journal, which is a compilation of the activities, would go here. And then this is the reflection prompt. I don't know everything about measuring yet, but I do know this. So this is the part I'm, as a learner, as an adult learner, I'm growing in, and that's how do I craft some solid learning experiences, some solid reflection prompts for the learning experiences, so the kids, it will pull out their thinking and make it uniquely their own. Because anybody could take these photos, even though they are their own, and the learning journal could be almost any kids, but I really want that personalization to come in that reflection. So I have a few more reflections for you. And
Mary, before you jump into that, I do have a question that came up from Tanya that she's asking, and since you're talking about measurements right now, have you ever used photos from students' work to show a comparison in measuring units?
Used photos from students. I haven't, but this is kind of unrelated, one discussion debrief structure that I really like is my favorite no. So what I could do and what I did do in the classroom was when students would complete a task and submit their responses somehow, be it piece of paper or digital, I would be intentionally looking for a common misconception. I'm anticipating a potential mistake, and I would pull that one out in an environment that's very calming and welcoming to this type of discussion without the student name on it, and tell the students, this is my favorite no, like my favorite wrong answer. Can y'all tell me why? And so in that case, I could pull up a child's work that was not precise, and we could talk about how to make it precise, if that helps. Here are those reflection prompts I want to get you thinking about. Michelle, will you add the link to the chat? They're
ones that you sent me this morning, correct? Just
yeah, from Project Zero. From Harvard's Graduate School of Education, they have generously shared Project Zero thinking prompts. And I've taken many of them, all of them, would be fantastic to use in conversation and communication, regardless of the content area. Some of them really specific around different content areas. Some of them work really well as reflection prompts in a digital portfolio. The prompt, the topic or the title, what makes you say that, you could have them dive into something and reflect on it through inquiry. What's going on? What do you see that makes you say that? Or opening it up to say, tell me more. Keep going. When I'm in the classroom with kids, I say, tell me more, keep going over and over to keep pulling out their thinking. See, think, wonder is a little bit like notice and wonder, except I want them to tell me everything they see. Because before we start to draw conclusions, I want to make sure that they see what I think they see, and I know what they see. And then what do you think about that? So like I'm guiding them to draw some conclusions. I've used Imagine If recently when I showed a video of two children on a seesaw and said, imagine if your teacher was on the seesaw with you. So you're adding this layer of perspective, and you're asking the kids to change the situation with a constraint, and then draw conclusions. Parts, purposes, and complexities can get into some great secondary conversation as well. What are all the parts of whatever system you're looking at. How do you narrow in on one or two of them, and then how do they work together? And the last one, connect, extend, challenge. And you wouldn't have to use this exact language, but how is this concept connecting to something else? What new ideas or impressions do you have? Like, what is challenging? What's confusing? What do you not know yet? So I encourage you to help do better than just collect artifacts. We don't want the kids to make a digital scrapbook. We want them to capture artifacts of their learning to show progress over time. We want them to organize it and save it so they can see that growth of what they understand. So let me show you what this looks like in my portfolio. Are we good with that, Michelle?
Yes, that's all set. And just so you know, Tanya said that she appreciated the no answer.
Oh,
yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so in my portfolio, which I know that Michelle will share, is this actual activity, this actual lesson. So I don't have much written about it, just that it's a part of a learning experience and part of a bigger learning experience, right? And it looks like this. Sometimes I build these learning experiences in numbers. So, and this being obviously a really short experience in the grand scheme of learning math, I like to make a lot of connections over time. So there's some goals for the kiddos, what they're going to be able to do, what tools they need digitally and not digital. This is the measuring with blocks part. So this was the learning experience where they see my example and then their turn. Now you add yours. Then they get into the estimating and measuring. So this is the part where they estimated an object that was 1 foot long and estimate an object that's 1 meter long. And then they get into the measurement tools where they choose to measure an object. It's really simple. But in the student reflection, this is what happened in the learning experience. Here's the actual size of me. Here's the learning journal. And now I want to complete this statement. I mentioned the reflection templates, and in my portfolio, I have, I'll put my, here you go. Okay, I put a link to my portfolio in the chat. I have distance learning reflection templates. These may not mean a whole lot to you because they're designed based on the learning experiences that I created for the kids over this distance learning experience. But you'll see there, some of them are English and then Spanish for our dual language kids. And then you'll see there's opportunities for the kids like solving problems with rational numbers. It explicitly talks about the learning experience, about if I passed in the car this highway sign and I calculated how far apart those highway exits are, this is what I figured out. And I created a video about it. I solved this task and I found a combination of digits that would make that true. So kind of a simple way to capture a small scale learning experience, not a giant project, but something small scale. That's one recommendation I have, which is kind of start small with that and provide a place for the kids to archive their thinking, but be sure to put a good prompt there to pull out their learning.
And Mary, I shared your two other links for the learning journal and also for the student reflection template. And then Jayla's just saying that she loves seeing the Spanish.
Yeah, we do our best to provide parallel content in Spanish for our dual language program. I did want to provide, if you are just starting with your own digital portfolio, what is recommended by myself and many of my colleagues is to start with your About Me page. Just create a page about you, and I want to show how simple mine is. This is it. My career, my leadership, my impact, my purpose. That's all. This is what I am and what I do. That's my style though, is kind of simple. I go back to it periodically to make sure that it's still accurate and that I'm still working towards what I believe is my purpose and my impact. So start with your about me. I think that's really important. It will get you going on down that road. Everything that I've shared today so far is on this page, Designing Learning Experiences, that I made public this morning. It kind of has my thoughts in order, and you'll see a lot of similar images to what I shared. So if you want to reread that, you're welcome to. But the last thing I want to talk about is the developing a color palette. Often I'm asked about this. It's kind of simple. And it's what makes my work distinguishable to me as my work. I like to have consistency and visual appeal to the content, to draw them in. And for example, this is my daughter Stella. And so I created a color palette based on Stella, and I use these colors when I'm creating some content. So I created this in Keynote or one of the iWork suite, but it doesn't really matter. You can just pull the colors from a photo that you take, and then it's your own, and then you can name them however you choose. But I pulled the blues from her eyes, and the light brown and dark brown from her hair, and her rosy cheeks, her favorite hoodie, and her blue shirt in the shadow. I've also created color palettes. If you're a Texas person like me, this is the Capitol, based on the colors from the upper granite and the base granite and the sky and the blue and the red from the flag. And then I can use those colors. And I think the kids would really love to do this as well. This is the palette I use almost all the time, and it was from a trip to the Salk Institute in San Diego, or outside of San Diego. So this is the concrete from the Salk Institute and the Chihuly glass in one of the buildings. So anyway, I use those colors for almost everything I do from my Salk trip. And then it helps you remember those things too.
Mary, I love that you incorporate your color schemes into your lessons, because it clearly shows this is your work. And knowing that educators are constantly creating content and lessons and resources to be able to know that this is mine, this remains mine. Even though students will, pull a template over and recreate and change, the original piece still remains under you, and that becomes your true artifact. I love that.
Thanks. Yeah, you know what's really funny is photos from things that are organic, people or buildings or nature, the colors just go together nicely. So instead of just randomly selecting colors, if you're not confident in your design, I recommend taking a photograph that you have and using colors from there. I created some lessons around Valentine's Day, and I created a palette for that so that every one of the lessons and supporting documents had a consistent look. Again, this took almost no time, really, but it added this nice polished look at the end. I wanted this stem and leaf journal. I wanted it to be more fun, because when you hear stem and leaf plots, it doesn't sound really great and exciting and fun. It's just kind of a dry subject. So I wanted to literally add some color. So I did that. This is my new favorite, this retro palette. And it adds this blue and orange, adds some more fun to some stuff. And I based some area lessons, intro to area, for upper elementary, on the idea of pixels. So anyway, this is in my portfolio too, but I wanted to give you some inspiration, and that it's not about left brain, right brain, or not about anything like that. Like, I have a math degree, but that's okay. I can still be creative and add some critical thinking there to the lessons and learning experiences. Again, I share everything, and if you can't find it, just reach out to me. I have content that I've created with GarageBand, Sketchnotes, Numbers, Keynote, all in my portfolio, and you are welcome to have them all. They're all there for you if you want to take them and make them your own, or grab them and use them as a starting point for inspiration. They're all math lessons, but that's all I have. Truly, Michelle, I'd love to answer some questions if anybody has any.
Yeah, I think this is a great time to start that. Thank you so much, Mary, for walking us through your process. I'm still kind of just blown away by how you start to how you get to. One thing that I know I would love to see is just if you could show a student example within Bulb, if that's a possibility. If there's one that you have offhand that we could just kind of see after the fact of what they were given to what they then were able to produce. And as Mary's pulling that up, don't hesitate to post in the Q&A, or if you'd like to post in the chat, we're watching both, whichever is easier, and we can get going on our questions.
Yeah, I'm gonna grab one for you.
And your color palette was clearly a hit because people are really enjoying that.
Isn't
I
that
loved
fun?
it. I think it's beautiful. It's such a great idea.
It's kind of fun. I'm not gonna lie. Okay, let me, I have a student example, so I'm gonna find the lesson that goes with it so that it makes sense. This is presenting on the fly.
Sorry.
Okay. Let me find, I'm looking at one on composing and decomposing shapes. I think I did this. Like I'm pretty organized. I'm thankful for that because I wouldn't be able to find anything.
You have students that are pulling from across K through 12, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, composing and decomposing 2D shapes is the activity.
And I do have a question. We can get to that one once we've done this piece. Thank you, Shayla. I see it.
So this lesson is on composing and decomposing shapes. If I can get it to open, it's downloading. And I have the student work sample too, so you can see what it looks like on their reflection.
Are you sharing?
No, not yet.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
It's okay. I wanted to make sure that I could mask the student name.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Yep, now I can share. Because of the sharing levels, I haven't double checked that this student is sharing with me because I'm within the organization, but I don't know if it's shared publicly, so I wouldn't want to put the kid's name out there. Okay, so
very important.
So let me start with the learning experience. So this is on composing and decomposing 2D shapes. So this again, hopefully you can see, I actually have an asset kit. So for myself, I have a series of generic blank templates. So if I want them to sort, or I want them to label, or I want them to add photos, I have these so I can pull them over and I'm not starting from scratch every time. So when you're there in creating, I recommend an asset kit because it goes so much faster and it helps you think all the possibilities of ways students can show or can experience learning and also show their understanding. So for this learning experience, again, they're composing and decomposing 2D shapes. So this is the part that the students see. I created this image. I want them to tell me how they're the same and how they're different. So there's 2 images. How are they the same and how they're different? Now, it's really important in math and in other subject areas that our kids listen, speak, read, and write about their content area, not just our English learners, but all kids. So I recorded myself giving clues to get started as a scaffold. So if the children need clues, they could play these audio files. And they say things like, what shapes do you notice? Or how many, can you count how many there are? And I think it talks about symmetry. So then there's a video that I created there of me composing shapes, and then they create their own. Finally, they watch a video on decomposing. And when I say a video, I mean like less than a minute. And then they can replay it and they can pause it and they create their own. And then finally, they go on a photo hunt and they take photos and of things they see and they use markup. So they mark up their shape. So let me show you what this looks like from a kid perspective. So this is the student work in Bulb based on the template I created. This week I learned about 2D shapes. First I learned about composing shapes and I made this. So I had made those 2 images. So then the child made this to compose shapes based on certain criteria that were given. Then they used this, if you're familiar with a geoboard with the rubber bands, this is a digital version of that because again, we're at home without the tools that we normally would have. So they created this. You can see this is composing. So we're putting 2 shapes together to build a larger shape. Also went on a shape hunt. So these are the photos from the shape hunt. The child found a triangle, the child found a hexagon, a circle, a square, and rectangles. So one thing I learned this week is shapes are everywhere. So this child was able to put together their learning from this other learning experience. So that's what it looks like to go from a lesson to the artifacts. I see there's room to grow. I want to put more audio files and more written language around the math that they learned, but this is definitely a step in the right direction.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you for walking us through that, Mary. That was really helpful.
On the fly.
Yeah, thank you. So first question is from Shayla. And what are the most common changes to these lesson experiences that you see teachers making once they personalize something you provide?
Hopefully the recordings of my audio, of my voice, I want them to delete and put their voice. Obviously in Spanish, if they're in a dual language class, but there's something about hearing your teacher's voice and hearing that familiar sound. And then that idea of, well, then if she can record it, then I can record it. So I would hope that one of the first things is if there's any audio recording, they replace that. The second is if there's photos of things that would be familiar to the students, I would want them to use those in place of photos I've used. If we're looking at bridging that. So if you have photos from your classroom that you could add, if it's like, this is a rectangle and it's a photo of your chalkboard, like, yes, we want we want them to bridge to unfamiliar situations, but we do want that familiar piece too. So I would have them replace some of the photos for sure. And those things don't compromise the fidelity of the content. Sometimes some of my educators occasionally will feel a little less confident in teaching the math. And so that's my job, is I'm going to take care of the content if you need me to. I will give you the guidance on the what to teach to the best of my ability. You just personalize it and make it your own. Yeah.
Awesome. So I actually have 2 questions that just came in. The first one is from Tanya. Will you talk about the process of training the students to use this platform or a digital platform?
Sure. Just straight up through experience. So our team of digital learning coaches are really amazing, and they created templates that were pushed out to the students. So in our student portfolios, they have templates for collections of their reading and writing class and science class and math class and social studies class. And then within there, it's like a folder, or it is a folder, and then they can put things in their collection. So the first thing is for them to start to understand that structure. But I would begin just like you begin as an adult, the About Me page, personalizing it with the banner image and things like that. The banner images and statements that I see from the kids, oh, they are so great. There's pictures of unicorns. There was one I saw that was just the blue, and it just said, my name is, and it had his name, and it said, I like blue. It's just simple. But whatever it is that makes it you, so give them a chance to personalize it and do that About Me page. I think that's really great. And then just scaffold it, provide them opportunities to fill in, and then have some consistency too. So in my templates, I use a lighter gray text when they in brackets when they need to delete that to put something in. So it's like a placeholder. So if you could get some consistency with that with the kids, then they would know every time I see this, I do that.
That's a great point. From Gabriella, do you have any advice for connecting hands-on learning to worksheet assessments? Do you assess in a different way other than a worksheet?
I think worksheets get a really bad rap because you can, on a piece of paper, you could ask a really amazing question that can take the learning really, really far. But from 10 feet away, it looks like a worksheet. But what I hear you saying is, how do I assess in another way other than a written text? And I think about that now. I'll have to excuse my math nerdiness here, but so if math is this grand, beautiful developmental progression, and in one little wedge of that, we go concrete to abstract. Am I backwards in the video? But you go concrete to abstract. Then maybe the summative is that abstract level where there's something in written language and they're solving this application problem. But if we want to assess along the way, which we do, that is where we could have them do that tangible demonstration. That does not mean that you can't do that tangible demonstration at the end. I would recommend thinking, how do I grab my kids and how do I get my kids to think critically? So how do I give them constraints? Like in class, we use this to measure. What if I gave you this to measure? And in that case, then they would have to take their thinking and apply it in a new situation. Or you counted the number of squares. What if we counted hexagons? How would that be the same and different? So even though that's written, they could approach it in a tangible way and demonstrate their understanding like that. So I always think less is more, and definitely give them opportunity to think critically and give them constraints are the way to go. I think if you say in this situation or under these conditions, I think is the best way if you want to think about assessing differently.
Awesome. And I'm just checking. It doesn't look like we have any new questions coming in. Oh, let me make sure, Kim.
Ongoing. Yeah. Kim's right. Assessment is ongoing every day. And if we can get that assessment to be almost community wide, right? Like I want the child to continually be reflecting on their learning and how they're growing. I was talking to Michelle yesterday about, was it you I was talking to? About diving in the summer. I don't even know who I was talking to. Okay, so like what if in their portfolio over this, no, it was, I don't even know who I was talking to. if in their portfolio, one thing they wanted to learn to do was the perfect dive over the summer, you can measure growth with that with just photo and video. So here's a video of me diving in May into the freezing cold water. And then here's a video of me diving in June and July and August, and you can see that growth. And then they could have some text along the side about how they are reflecting on how that's going. Mm-hmm. So like there's so many different ways to add that visual image to that, or drawings of what they want to perfect or describing it. Yeah, just that's how I think you could collect the artifacts and put it in their portfolio related to this tangible idea of tangible learning.
That's a proof of learning right at the end of it, right? You're taking them through the process. Even if it's a dive, you're going to see how they've progressed over time. There's the growth. They've accomplished it. It's fantastic.
Sure.
Right. Let me see if we've got any others. I'm just double checking. I'm seeing a lot of comments now coming in. Not sure if you're seeing those, Mary.
Yeah, Sherry's a music teacher.
Yep.
Portfolios are audio and video. Yeah, so then if you think about that and you think about who your audience is, if your audience is musicians and artists and things like that, then there's a common understanding of the growth that's happening. But if the audience is general public, you'd want that for sure, that reflection, articulation, that annotation about what is it that as an artist that I'm creating or I'm showing or I'm demonstrating. If you think about this as like a living resume in a sense over time, making it your own and adding your own commentary makes it really powerful to say, this is why I selected what I selected, and this is what I noticed, and this is my next step. Yeah.
So I just got another question here from Lori. How does this look with secondary classes, especially with social studies?
Oh man, I don't have any social studies examples, but anything where you could reflect and add artifacts. I think about, in social studies, I think about primary sources and drawing parallels between primary sources or between your own written work and some other artifact or some other event. In social studies also, I read a lot, but if you think about, oh my gosh, I'm completely blanking the name of the book. Oh, not Lifelong Kindergarten. I'm so mad I can't remember. Okay, but there's this great book on play in the classroom and how you can redesign things. Like if you give if this action figure was a character in this historical event, what would the box look like? What would the character be wearing? What would whatever? And so you're putting that, it's just like that Imagine If from Project Zero. So you're thinking critically about this perspective of this one person in this historical event. Photos of that, video of that, stop motion animation of that, anything around that could really show a really in-depth understanding of that social studies concept. So anyway, just think, how do I demonstrate my understanding? And that's what I would do. Michelle has asked if there's anything in the resource center. And
I think there are. And so that's why I'm asking
awesome.
Chelsea, and I'm sure Bree also might have some ideas. Yay. So hang on, Lori, because we may be able to pull you in some more specific examples of social studies. Yeah. But I think what you shared here, Mary, makes total sense.
Sure thing.
Any other questions? Oh, Jennifer is saying use primary source photos. What would it sound like? What else would you see? And oh, and she's sharing a link.
Nice.
Thank you guys. This is fantastic. I love it. Okay, well, we're actually right at the top of the hour. So unless there's any more questions coming in, oh, thank you, Bria. This is a fun project around using POPs. And there's the link in there. We'll make sure that we also share out these links that are coming in when we do the follow-up email. So anybody that registered will be getting those, so that and of course, if we pull more, we'll make sure that we include them also in that. All right,
Awesome.
Mary, I just want to say a huge thank you to you for your time today, because I know that this is a lot, and you put together such a great program, and we're just so appreciative for your time today. And before we close out, I just want to make sure that you guys are aware, I'm happy to announce that our next webinar is actually a week from tomorrow, and it'll be with Principal Frazier out of Turner Tech in Miami-Dade. And he's going to be sharing his perspective of how digital portfolios have worked within his whole school. So we're going to hear from a principal in next Wednesday, and that Evite will be coming out tomorrow. So if you're in that list, you'll definitely see it, and we'd love to have you join us and keep the conversation going. Mary, anything before we close out?
No, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm happy to share anything.
Awesome. Yeah, and as you can see, she has shared out her own bulb portfolio. Take a peek at it. It's beautiful. I have done so numerous times this past week. So don't hesitate to go in there and pull over some of her really great templates. All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. And we'll hopefully see you all soon. May you stay safe and healthy. Thanks.
Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.